we've heard from the professionals. So I hope all of that makes sense. So without further ado, let's start, if it's okay. We'll start with, in no particular order, we'll start with Benji, who hopefully will tell us about cybersecurity and his route into that. So Benji, if you okay to start.
Yeah, of course, happy to. So great to be here. Also sad that it's a virtual event. This year it's normally my one opportunity to get rid of sort of all the thousands of business cards I ordered on my first day, which no one seems to use anymore. But great to see you all. And I remember coming to the event as a student as well, so nice to be on this side for the last couple of years. So my name is Benji Gubbe. I think I've probably met some of you around, but I'm a senior consultant working in our cybersecurity team at EY, so at Ernst & Young, working with our financial services clients mostly. So looking at kind of banks, insurers, wealth and asset managers, and that sort of thing. I've been at EY for about 3.5 years now. Before that, I went to JFS. I studied physics at the University of Manchester. So I had Brian Cox as one of my lecturers. If anyone knows who that is, that's my fun fact I like to tell everybody. And then I know in the little briefing email we got beforehand, I was told to definitely call out any I guess hiccups that we had along the way in our career. And I guess I had quite a few that I'm happy to share. So I guess one thing which wasn't necessarily a hiccup, is actually a bit of a blessing in disguise for me, was that I ended up graduating with a 2-2 degree from university. And what that meant was I was slightly limited in the types of programs that I could then apply for. That wasn't such a bad thing, as lots of employers, including EY now, do a lot of their recruitment based on just online testing and strengths-based assessments rather than looking directly at grades. So I'd say if any of you are in that position, definitely don't let it put you off. But I came out of university and I joined Grant Thornton first on their technology risk graduate program. And after about 6 months, I decided that program wasn't actually for me. It was very focused on auditing and not so much the technology side. And there's nothing wrong if anyone knows any auditors for that. There just wasn't the career path I wanted to go down. So after 6 months, I left that program, took a bit of time off to apply for other jobs, go traveling, and then applied for EY and managed to get a position here on our graduate program about 3.5 years ago, and haven't looked back since. Since joining, I guess there's a few areas in cybersecurity that I've worked in. I work more on the sort of risk and compliance side, less so on the very technical areas, although we have others in our team that do it. So the main areas that I work in are in sort of third-party risk management, so looking at kind of supply chain risks, cloud providers that support banks and everything in between. Doing cyber crisis simulations, so going to our clients and trying to realistically simulate for them what it would be like if they got hacked, or if all of their computers went down, or one thing which no one really prepared for was a pandemic. What would happen if suddenly no one could go into their office the next day? Everyone had to work from home. So we'd simulate what that would be like, and how clients can then react, how they communicate with their customers and with everyone else to ensure their business continues running smoothly. And then the other main thing that I've been working on over the last couple of years is something called operational resilience. So what we call that is basically the ability to prepare for, respond and recover from incidents. So the idea that no matter what goes wrong, you should still be able to keep, making your online payments and checking your account balances and things like that. But yeah, happy to take any questions on, my career journey, what I'm currently doing. And as part of my role, I'm also the early careers champion in our team. So I'm responsible for all the interns, the graduates, people that come here on industrial placement as well. So I'm happy to chat about the application process, as well as sort of what a day in my job is actually like too. And I've come into the office today, which is a really lovely treat. So nice to be out here in the city once again.
Yeah, thank you very much for that, Benji. And I'm sure we'll have some questions later. So did Brian Cox ever get his keyboard out in the lectures?
He never did, but he was a absolute sucker for name dropping. Whenever something would go wrong, he'd be like, "Oh, Al Murray's always complaining about my handwriting," or when I was talking to David Beckham the other day, he also didn't understand, relativity or whatever. So it was nice to mix it up a bit.
Yeah. I think that, thank you very much. That is really, really interesting hearing about your route in. The one thing that stuck in my mind from everything you said was the 2-2 in physics. And I was thinking to myself, physics is a particularly difficult degree. Everyone knows that. So do you, I mean, obviously you said don't let that put you off, but how do you think you managed to do it? Because it's quite an achievement that you managed to get into the field you're in with the 2-2. So what do you put it down to?
I think lots of large organizations put their sort of an entry requirement, but you have to have a 2-1 in any degree, almost as a way to just narrow down the field, because they'll have so many thousands of applicants and they have to do it somehow. The way in which I ended up getting this job, and in my first round of applying for graduate programs, so when I got my first job at Grant Thornton, I didn't actually get an offer from EY. I sort of failed the online testing. But then after I left Grant Thornton and applied to a number of organizations again, I did get in. And as I said, it's based a lot on the online tests. You're looking at problem solving skills, situational judgment tests, and things like that. So I think probably the biggest thing was just practicing. There are resources online. I'm happy to kind of share links to ones that I use. But it's just practicing, really getting the knack for it. And I'd say that's probably it. And not being afraid to go and talk to as many people as you can for advice. Events like this are great, and any kind of insights that you can get to show that you really know the company, as opposed to I'm just looking for a job, I find really helps, and employers are really receptive to that.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Benji. That was great. Okay, well, I think we'll move on. So we'll move on to Jason Lipowicz, if that's okay. And Jason obviously will tell us about his route into software engineering.
Thanks, Richard. So hi, everyone. My name is Jason. So I am a software engineer. A little bit about my background. So I graduated also from JFS. Then I went to Imperial College London to study computer science and maths as a joint honours. I got into software engineering from pretty young age, was sort of taught myself to program in like primary school, developed some sort of small websites in secondary school, and then sort of built up from there. When it came to actually applying for jobs, I knew pretty much that I wanted to go into software engineering, but I had no idea of sort of where to apply. So what I would say is the first thing I would sort of advise someone else is internships are really the key for software engineering. Internships are a great opportunity to get that experience for 3 months. Often the employer doesn't have to take much of a gamble with an intern because it's only for a short amount of time. So it's sort of a win-win for both of you. And you get to see the company, and then hopefully you get a return offer at the end. When I applied for internships, I actually applied for over 50 companies in my first year. And I would really encourage you just to spend a few evenings or a weekend just going through and just sending applications, because when I did my first set of applications, about 50 companies, I got pretty much all of them didn't respond to me at all. I got 15 that actually did get back to me. I went through interview processes. I got 14 rejections and I got 1 offer. So it really puts into perspective that you just have to just persevere, and one company will always get back to you and will follow through it, and hopefully you'll get that job. So a lot of people ask, like, where should you apply if you don't have any idea? A nice sort of piece of advice that I was told was go through your phone and pick the apps that you use every day. And if you use those apps, then part of the reason why you use them is because you believe in the idea, you like the company, and so you'll probably want to work for them. And so that's a sort of a nice way of just having a good idea of where to even start. So for me, that was the companies like Facebook, Amazon, Google, Twitter, and then looking at things like LinkedIn, Deliveroo, Uber Eats, all of these type of companies that you use are really interesting places to work as a software engineer. So my first role as an internship was actually with a small startup called CarWow. some people might have heard of them. They are pretty big on YouTube. They do car reviews, a guy called Matt Watson. So I was working for a summer on their dealership website. So it was a portal for car dealers to list all their cars on the website. Learned so much in that first 3 months. I don't think a university could have prepared me anyway for that, because there's just so much you learn on the job that I just valued so much from that first internship. Coming out of the first internship, I had a much better idea of sort of where I wanted to go, because software engineering really appealed to me, specifically web-based. So for my second year, I wanted to apply somewhere different. Again, the same sort of processes. I applied to loads of companies, heard back from hardly any, but I managed to get an offer at Amazon. And I did a software engineering internship at Amazon for 3 months in the Prime Video team. So I worked on the core parts of their website, sort of the watch list page and those tiles that you see on the front page. And I was actually planning to return to Amazon as a full-time engineer after graduation. Although to the end of my internship, I actually received a call from a company that I'd interviewed with and actually got rejected from, asking if I'd like to re-interview. And I did, and I got an offer there, and I'm now there working full-time. So where I'm currently is a company called Palantir. Palantir is a data integration company founded in America, but we have a big office here in the UK. And the role that I do is basically a mixture of software engineer with tech consultant. So we work with customers to basically solve big data problems on a huge scale. And I'm particularly working with like UK government sectors. So looking at like government data and trying to get as much value as possible from this vast amount of data from 30, 40 years ago, and trying to help them sort of modernize their systems. So yeah, I've been working there for nearly 2 years now, and yeah, loving it, really enjoy what I do. And I'm sure there'll be more questions, so I can talk about it there.
Thank you very much, Jason. That was brilliant. Really, really good to hear. And you know, I often spend my time when I'm giving careers advice to graduates, telling them how important it is to send out speculative applications, the way you got your internships, and you know, persevering, never giving up, even if everyone rejects you. You know, if you keep doing it, someone's bound to say yes eventually. And so that's really great for people to hear that from someone that's been there and done it. So yeah, great. Love that story. Thank you very much for that. And like you say, I'm sure there'll be some questions later. I'm going to move on to another software engineer. So we'll hear a slightly different story, most likely. So Alexander, if you're, or maybe you'd like to be called Alex, sorry, Alex, if you want to speak next, that'd be great.
Yeah, of course. So yeah, very happy to be here. Also much similar to the people who were just speaking, I've also had quite a journey getting to where I am. So I graduated from Hasmo, not JFS boy, unfortunately, not fitting in here. But I finished Hasmo not so well, actually. I didn't do very well in my A-levels at all. And then I spent a couple of years in Israel, in yeshiva. And I was thinking during that time what I wanted to do, how I was going to get into university with my not so great A-levels that I'd done. They were good subjects, but I hadn't done so well in them. And I decided that quite randomly that I wanted to do computer science, not because I was a coder or because I'd done any software engineering in the past, but simply because I like computers, I was decent at using them, so I thought maybe I'll just give it a go. And I ended up going to Westminster, and I really enjoyed the course in the end, and I really enjoyed the practicality of the course. And it so happens that I tend to feel anyway, that mid-tier universities, which I think is where Westminster sits specifically for computer science, are generally quite a bit more practical than the higher tier universities like Cambridge, Oxford, UCL, any of those. And they focus a lot on the practical side of coding and programming and software engineering, rather than the mathematical theory behind it, which I absolutely loved, and it helped me a bunch. I even debated moving to a better university halfway through and applied and got in, but I decided not to move in the end. I quite liked being at what I like to think to be the upper end of a mid-tier university than the lower end of a much better university. I actually spoke to a lot of recruiters about it at the time, and they all felt the same. And then during my time at university, I worked as an assistant teacher in a grammar school, Parder's House Grammar School, for those of you who know. And there I suggested that I teach computer science to more advanced math students that they had who might be interested in getting slightly bored in their lessons. And anyway, that eventually grew out to me realizing that there was a huge gap in the school with their computer systems. They didn't have any kind of student management system. And I suggested that using the skills that I learned in my first/second year of uni, that I try build them some kind of infrastructure for managing their students and for their managing the homework and for keeping parents informed of everything. Anyway, that ended up becoming really useful because in between my second and third year of university, I applied for a bunch of internships, much like everyone here, and I advise very similarly to apply for anything and everything you can do. One of the places I applied to was Google, and it was Google London in particular, and they didn't get back to me, unfortunately. But a few months later, the Google Dublin office got in touch with me. They have a very big office out there. And my phone's just turned on because it's heard me say the word Google. Yeah, so they got in touch with me and wanted to interview me. And I was super excited by that. And it turns out that during that whole interview process, the one thing which everyone was super interested in was the small student management system I had built for a very small grammar school, a very small Jewish grammar school in the small area of Finchley. So it was just, I found it interesting that my academics meant nothing, even though like in university, thankfully I'd done quite well. It didn't mean much to them. Like kind of most of the other stuff, including my A-levels, my GCSEs, none of it really meant that much. They were really interested in kind of the more innovative side of me. And the fact that I had kind of managed to get a piece of software running in a school and pitch the whole idea to them in the first place was super interesting for them. So I'd say that if your academics are lacking, don't worry too much. I think everyone has said that so far, but specifically in the tech industry, like people have like the recruitment side of things has really stepped up and understood that that's not a huge component. It sometimes is when you apply to like the larger, more old school companies, but for the modern tech companies, it's more about the projects that you've done, etc. Anyway, during my time at Google, I realized that software engineering might not be for me. And although I enjoyed the programming side of things, I enjoyed talking to the person who was giving me the tasks to do more than anything, and that was the product manager on the team. A product manager is essentially the person who sits at the intersection between like the more business and finance side of the company, and marketing and also technology. So essentially the product manager will always be like the person who starts with the features and the ideas, can be fed into from other people in the company like developers and engineers, etc. But a lot of my job now as a product manager, which is what I eventually slipped into, is about pitching new features, new ideas, and new concepts, and trying to leverage the technology, the technical skills that I have, and any of the other skills that I picked up over the years to understand what the return on investment is going to be on every feature that we build, and then understanding how it might be built, and then the developers will help me build it. I'll work with designers and I'll work with developers, and we'll together as a team, we will build products which hopefully please our users. So behind every feature on Facebook and Instagram and Google and all these things that you guys use is a product manager who has probably pitched the idea and then fed it down to like kind of the development team who get cracking with actually building those features. So So from Google, I applied to a bunch of places to try and get a product management position. It's really difficult to get one because usually for product managers, they like to have people who have experience as product managers. So it's a bit circular and a bit difficult to get into. But I managed to get into a junior product manager role at Shazam, the music app. I spent quite a bit of time there. I spent about like 8 months there. It was a bit of an internship that I got extended on for like kind of months and months. And that was a super interesting time. So it kind of taught me the groundwork of how to communicate properly with engineers and how to write out tasks, or what we call stories, properly for developers. And also taught me a lot about how to design cool apps. And then from Shazam, I moved to another company called IG Index, which is like a software trading company. I was also in product management there. Spent about a year there. It was a much larger company than Shazam, of like, it was sort of several thousand people rather than Shazam, which is like 60 people. So it took a lot to get used to, like kind of a lot of the bureaucracy that happens in larger companies. But was obviously super helpful to get used to that. And then more recently, I was in a company called Babylon Health, which is an app which lets you FaceTime GPs and get prescriptions through the app, which was super exciting, super fast paced. It was a startup and lots happening there. And now I'm in a company called Refinitiv, which is a competitor of Bloomberg. We kind of was part of Thomson Reuters, now part of the London Stock Exchange, and also going through a super exciting time. They just got sold from Reuters to London Stock Exchange for 27 billion. So it's a huge deal with loads of kind of change in the organization. But I would say, to sum up, if you're looking for a career in technology, but not necessarily software engineering itself, you feel you have the technical skills, but you also kind of are a huge fan of the business side and the marketing side of products, and also the design side, so there's like a splash of everything. I would highly recommend looking into the product management role. It's not such a familiar role to people here, like in London and the UK. It's kind of been super popular in the US for a long time, and now in the UK it's kind of getting much more popular, and all the mainstream tech companies will have it.
That's great. Thanks very much, Alex. It's very interesting route that you took, and I love the idea that they were much more concerned with the project you did at Hasmo, and that sort of catapulted your career, into Google and Shazam, and now obviously you're a seasoned product manager, which is great. Really interesting to hear. And I think, in order to do the product management, you obviously have to have that background in software engineering, to understand what you're talking about and to fully grasp and get the concepts and to be able to put them across. So yeah, it's just another way. We all know the tech industry is growing massively, exponentially, and I suppose it's just, there's so many different branches that grow from the foundations, the degrees and the starts in the careers that you guys have had. So it's really interesting to hear. Thanks, Alex. If anyone's got any questions for Alex, feel free to put, or the other two professionals that have spoken so far, then obviously feel free to put them in the chat, and we'll come back to that later. I'm going to just move straight on now to our last professional tonight. Thanks, Katy, for coming along. Katy from the world of data analysis, data science, so a slightly different, route, a slightly different path. Welcome, Katy.
Hi, yeah. So I took a slightly different route to and the other speakers. So I actually did a PhD in applied maths, and towards the end of my PhD, I realised that I didn't want to be to kind of continue in academia. And what I did was I was involved in like a sort of internship / summer program, like a summer camp type program for PhD students that were like looking to transition from academia into data science. And what that like provided was like a few kind of courses on more kind of general data science topics, but also the ability to do like a 6-week internship with a company. So I worked on a project for British Gas, looking at their smart meter rollout. And yeah, so from there I decided that I kind of wanted to work in the data space. And I ended up, my first like job after my PhD was a consultant role at BAE Systems AI. So working within their data practice, which meant I got to kind of experience a lot of different roles like as part of my job. So I kind of worked on some data analysis, some more kind of data science, and also ended up doing kind of a data engineering role as well. And I got to work with like a lot of big name clients. So like I worked on government projects and like with FTSE 100 companies. So that was like a good experience into that world. But I think I kind of saw from that role that I wanted to be doing more of the technical work, which wasn't always possible within like that job, kind of within the data practice there. So I now work as a kind of software engineer in a tech company called Contexa. And so it's like we're about 5 years old, the company, just grown to like 300 people. And we've got a network analytics platform. And so I work on the data science team there as a software engineer. So we kind of sit within their R&D department. So that's like all the kind of core engineering teams that work on their product. But my role is like a bit more varied. So I'm kind of, our team is sort of responsible for everything analytics based at Contexa. So whether that is kind of actually writing like software engineering, so writing code for their platform, but also like creating tools and like helping the teams that kind of deliver our solution to clients. So like helping them out with how best to use like the data analytics and what to do with that. So it's quite varied, even though it's a software engineering role. I guess, so one thing I like about working at a smaller company is kind of, you get a lot more responsibility quite early on. And like stuff just happens at a faster pace than sometimes with the larger companies. Like if you've got an idea and you want to run with it, it's kind of easy to, I can go and speak to like the people at the different department and we can make that happen, which is really good. I guess I've also been doing a lot of interviewing recently for our team, and like we kind of are always just looking for kind of general aptitude. Like we work in Scala, which isn't like such a common language, especially amongst graduates. So always just looking for general aptitude, but also we want to be able to like see how people communicate technical ideas. So it's not just all about the skills. Like we'll reject really strong coders if they can't explain to us what they're doing. So that's something like really important as well when you're going through the process.
Great, thanks very much, Katy. Just before we move on to questions, if people are thinking, they're wondering between cybersecurity, data analysis, software engineering, and that sort of thing, what sort of, I suppose, benefits or kind of skills do you think they would need to go into the data side of things?
So for the data side, I guess our team is quite varied and maybe across like, in fact, like the whole way through my sort of career. While probably the majority are kind of coming from that maths background, we get kind of more people coming from computer science, like sort of with more software engineering skills. Like the newest member of my team now is coming from a chemistry degree. So like general science graduates, I think. I don't know if I've ever seen like an arts or humanities graduate, but like if you can code, that would probably be okay. Like, you know, and there's quite a broad range of stuff that you can do. So like maybe like more on the data analysis side, like definitely in my first job as the consultant, like there were people that kind of their technical skills weren't necessarily great, but like they could understand, like they could look at a graph and understand what it means and understand how to communicate about data. And that can also work as well.
Great. Yeah, thanks very, very much, Katy. Just very quickly before I open the field for questions, just, you know, an interesting thing I've always thought about when I'm giving careers advice for people going into cybersecurity. you know, data analysis, software engineering is what you touched upon there, where you don't think you've ever seen an arts humanities graduate get into that field. And I do occasionally get people, I mean, you know, so many graduates do a degree that they don't actually end up in. And, you know, so many of these non-vocational degrees, you know, people's options are wide open. What do the other three professionals think about going into what is a math science related career path from a humanities or arts background? Do you think it's possible? Would you advise against it? Any thoughts on that from the other? Benji, you've taken your mute off. I'll let.
Yeah, it's corporate trick. If you come off mute first, and people know that you're gonna jump in. But yeah, I mean, we've got people in our team from all sorts of backgrounds, including sort of, you know, arts, I think, you know, music, as well as, you know, people that study computer science at university as well. Now, obviously, it does you know, influence the roles that you can do. So if you've studied history, you're unlikely to be able to become a penetration tester where you're trying to hack into an organization, because that requires, you know, really deep technical knowledge. But that doesn't mean there aren't roles within cybersecurity that you can do, especially I guess in sort of like larger organizations. Often if there's a big induction program, for example, you'll get given a lot of the training, a lot of the skills that you require at the start, or, you know, lots of things you can learn on the job. But I found it's as Katie said, you're looking really for, you know, someone to show an interest and be able to explain, you know, what they're doing, even if they're not necessarily an expert already.
Yeah, brilliant. Thanks, Benji. Jason, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, so the only thing I would add, I completely agree with everything Benji was saying there, is that I've recently started interviewing for our company, and the one thing I would say is I've never looked at a person's degree when like considering their application. So it's just something that isn't really of interest, because what you're more interested in is the experience, the project that you've worked on, and then can that be communicated in an interview setting. So I guess if you haven't done a maths or science related degree, then all you would require is, can you supplement the experience that you might not have got at university with other things? So provided that you're willing to, in your spare time, start learning how to code or research stuff, do some side projects, and you can talk about those in an interview, then you've got just as much of a shot as anyone else.
Yeah, very good, brilliant. Yeah, I mean, there's so many people teaching themselves to code in this day and age. The amount of people I meet that use websites like Udemy and Skillshare and all these kind of sites to teach themselves to code. And I suppose if you can create a bit of a portfolio and show that you've got a natural affinity for it, then even if you've got a degree in geography, you know, as long as you've got, you know, like, was it Jason or Alex? I can't remember. One of you was saying the internships are so important. If you can show, and if you can get an internship in this particular field, even if your whole background is totally different from it, and add to that your kind of the short courses or boot camps or something like that, then it's definitely possible. I've seen it. So for any of you out there, any of you graduates that are looking at that, then it's definitely possible. In fact, I can see Avichai on there. We were talking the other day. Avichai's got a music degree and is now, you know, trying to get into coding. So, case in point. Do we have any questions from anyone for the professionals? No. Okay. Well, if you think of any, let us know. I have prepared. I don't know if Yael has any questions as well, but I have prepared a couple of questions. So, one question I wanted to ask was, that I think would be useful to the graduates. If let's say you're thinking about going into cybersecurity with perhaps a longer term plan of, let's say, starting your own business, having a startup, or diversifying into software engineering and data. I mean, how easy is it to start in one element of what we've been discussing and move into, you know, let's say the data science world? How easy is it to do that once you've started in a career, would you say? Alex?
I guess I'll take that one because I've done it. For me, I mean, it's actually, this is a bit of a cheat because in general, software engineers can often transition quite easily into product management, because product management just requires kind of some technical knowledge, but at the same time, it just requires like strong communication and business skills. So I would say, yes, I've seen those transitions happen before. I've seen it myself. I've also seen it in many other people. Most of the other product managers I've spoken to have either been software engineers in the past or have been a business analyst that's decided to become a product manager, or even a data analyst who's decided to become a product manager. Or it could, and I've seen this happen before as well, somebody who's done something in humanities or something completely unrelated, or maybe focused entirely on just marketing and has done, let's say, a coding course, or has done a lot of self-teaching or projects on the side that has taught them enough technical skills to merge those together to become a product manager. So essentially, yeah, it's a bit like what everyone else has said. As long as you're able to mix those skills, as long as you're able to supplement whatever you're missing with some other skills that you've taught yourself, you'll be absolutely fine, I personally think anyway. Yeah.
Okay, great. Alex, thanks for that, Alex. Any other thoughts on that?
I know in my experience, it's also, I think, especially early on in your careers, you know, no one's expecting you to be, you know, deeply ingrained expert in anything really. And there's nothing wrong with, you know, trying out different areas. I know in my team, there have been quite a few people who have moved from, you know, cybersecurity into data analytics and the other way around. People that have moved into, you know, similar jobs to other people on this call. So it definitely does happen. You just have to, I think, as Alex said, you know, push in the effort yourself. If you've got no interest, or if you've got no, you know, understanding and no experience in it, I think you can't just say, I want to go to that team because, you know, they look like a good laugh. You have to, you know, go that extra mile, make those connections, and it doesn't hurt. And I've found people are really receptive if you just, you know, literally look them up on the kind of work directory and say, hey, I've seen your name come up on this project. It looks really interesting. Can you tell me a bit about it? And you know, and go from there. But I guess the short answer is it definitely does. It definitely does happen, and you just have to make the effort.
Yeah, great. Thanks. Thanks, Benji. And another question I thought of, which I think will be useful for a lot of graduates. When I speak to clients about getting into any of the fields that we're discussing tonight, cybersecurity, software engineering, etc., a lot of them are quite interested to do it, and they'll think it's exciting to work for a big company. But do you really sit in front of your desk the entire day? Do you ever, like, what would you say to someone that really wants to do it but doesn't want to be tied to their desk, in, you know, head in a screen 24/7? But I mean, you know, is there a happy balance in your jobs, or is that what you find you're doing most of the day?
I can start. So I think it really does vary between companies. So that's why I think I said, like, the internships are a really good opportunity to sort of see exactly what that sort of happy medium is. In my job, it's, I think, really well balanced because we work directly with businesses. And so we have that face-to-face contact where we are prototyping ideas, scoping out the requirements, and then we go ahead and go back to the desk, develop it, go back to the client, get their feedback, and iterate. And it's that sort of iteration process that keeps you a bit more sane, I think, because I personally could not spend my whole day in front of the desk. And there are some companies where you will be doing that. So it's not a one size fits all, I don't think, but if that's something you would enjoy, to get out more and to not be sitting at your desk all day, then there are definitely loads of companies out there that can get that for you.
Brilliant. Any other thoughts on that from you guys?
Yeah, I just one thought on it is, even if you do have a job that keeps you sitting in front of the computer all day, there are actually a lot of companies now who acknowledge that, and therefore kind of when I intern at Google, you know, they're famous for having the slides and the swings and like massage rooms and stuff like that in their kind of office. And that isn't just so that everyone can go home to their respective families and friends and show off about it. It's actually because when you step away from your desk and you're sitting in the jacuzzi or you're swinging on the swing, is actually often when you come up with your best either technical solutions or your best product ideas. It's that same idea that when you have your shower thoughts, you know, when you come up with your best ideas when you're in the shower or when you're in the bath. Same idea at Google. It's a lot of the reason why they have that stuff there, why they have all these fun like playground activities. It's because to get away from your desk and to just have a completely separate environment is super important, and companies are very supportive of that nowadays.
Okay, thanks very much. Thanks, Alex.
I can also add, like, from the data point of view, like there's definitely a lot of kind of client facing roles. You know, you always got to explain your results to someone. And like, I think definitely on our kind of delivery teams, so people that are working with clients and stuff like that, the complaint is probably more the opposite, that they're not getting enough opportunity to like do the technical stuff. So yeah, I think there's definitely like possibility to find these kind of roles if that's something that you're more interested in.
Right, thanks very much. Anyone thought of any questions to ask? Oh yeah, great. Go for it. We'll start with, is your name Holly, or is that just the name on your?
Yeah, sorry, I couldn't figure out how to change it. I'm
That's
using
all right, don't
my
worry.
fiance's iPad. So my name's Max. Firstly, I want to say thank you very much for doing this. I found it very helpful. So a little bit about myself is that I, due to certain limitations, I find myself being unable to finish my degree in economics for about 2 years. So I've been looking at getting into IT. I was hoping to do it after this, but because I've got another 2 years or so to sit around, I was wondering, do you guys know if an apprenticeship in general IT is a good way to sort of start getting into this sort of role? Or do you think sort of the DIY courses and build up a portfolio of them would be better? Because I've been looking around and I'm really not sure what would be the best sort of entry, like very, very early entryway into this sort of thing.
Yeah, thanks a lot for that, Max. Yeah, I'm sure in all of your teams, you see people coming from different routes, don't you? You probably get some people coming from apprenticeships. I know that's becoming bigger and bigger in some of these firms. You also see people coming obviously on the grad schemes and various other routes. So yeah, it's a good question. But what are you noticing in your companies that you're working in, and how could any of you advise Max? Benji, I suppose, might be a good one to start with.
Sure. So I guess, yeah, thanks for the question. We I know we have so many entry routes. So, you know, I came on the graduate program. We do have apprenticeship programs as well, which can take you into, you know, any area of, you know, EY, as well as sort of in our kind of techie side. I think there's obviously different benefits that you get from coming through an apprenticeship as opposed to through a graduate program. So it just depends, you know, what you feel might be most appropriate for you. I know I was slightly jealous of, you know, I really enjoyed my time at university, but there are people on the apprenticeship program who came through with, you know, no debts, you know, a couple of years ahead of me, and, you know, getting lots of the same experiences that I'm getting, but sort of getting a lot of that training up front. So I think with any of them, I appreciate this is probably a bit of a consultancy answer, which isn't straight to the point. It's just looking at, you know, what you think for your circumstances and based on your interests will be most appropriate. So some people I know, you know, they love training, they love the learning. So actually, they're happy to do university and then do a long training program where there's lots of, you know, formal education. And that really works well for them. There are other people who I work with who just think, I don't want to sit in a classroom. I just want to get out and I'll, you know, try it and I'll watch someone do it, or shadow them or get it wrong a couple of times, and that's how they prefer to learn. So I think it probably varies a lot per company and per person. But the bottom line I'd say is, if there is an apprenticeship that you think works well for you, for all the reasons you mentioned, then I wouldn't rule it out thinking no, it's better to go for a graduate program or something else like that. It's definitely a really good route in if you find that's what works.
Thanks, Benji. And I mean, I'm assuming at EY you probably don't get many people that have sort of come in through doing the do-it-yourself courses, whereas for the likes of Katy, smaller companies, what would you say to that, Katy? Max is thinking, one option could be doing, all of these like boot camps, coding camps and things like that. Do people get jobs at firms like yours with that sort of background, or is it much more through the degree route?
So I'll be honest and say I think the majority of our grads will have done a degree, but that doesn't mean that we wouldn't be open to like that kind of thing. I think the route kind of is a bit different. If you could persuade the technical like recruiters that that your skills are good and that you can actually code, then we wouldn't have a problem with it. I think it was Jason mentioned that he doesn't look at the degree, which I guess is kind of similar to that. We wouldn't start asking you technical questions about your course. So if you can show me you can code, I don't really care how you learn how to do it. I can see that you can do it, and that's fine. So yeah, I think with smaller companies, you probably have better luck with the online route, but you really will have to work hard to show that you do actually know what you're talking about. So if that's like making sure that you've got your own projects that are accessible to people to see, so it would be harder, but like definitely possible.
Yeah, brilliant. And I think the key to all of those routes, whether it's grad scheme, apprenticeship, do-it-yourself course, I think the key, and certainly what Benji and Katy are saying, is that you have to work hard for all of them. If it's an apprenticeship, you have to apply for tons and tons of them. If it's going through internships, as was it Jason was saying, you've got to apply for tons of them, because you might get rejected from 49, and if you stop there, it could be a bit of a sad story. But the 50th one says yes, then it's been worthwhile getting rejected for the 49, so being accepted at the 50th attempt. So whatever way you look at it, and there's lots of options, but definitely hard work is involved. So I hope that helps, Max. And Max, if you want to book a careers advice, employment advice appointment with me, I think that would be a good move. Then we could definitely have a detailed chat about your situation. Just call up the receptionist at Work Avenue, book an appointment with myself or one of my colleagues. Avichai, were you going to ask a question?
Yeah, I was. Thank you. Just really directed at those of you who didn't take a direct route with a degree in computer science or anything like that. That's the background I'm coming into this with, where I'm studying and doing certifications on my own and practicing with labs and messing around and all that sort of thing. But my main concern, the only thing that I really keep coming back to, is the imposter syndrome, feeling that either I'm not doing enough, or that I'm not going to be valuable to a company if I go for an interview, or for 50 interviews, however many it is. I imagine that that's something, with time and with experience, I will improve on. But I want to know, are you still dealing with that sort of thing? Have you dealt with that sort of thing even now at this point in your careers?
Yeah, thanks, Avichai. I don't know, Jason, do you want to answer?
Yeah, I can quickly answer. I mean, so obviously I can't come in from the non sort of computer science route, because that's the route I took. But just I'll cover one part about that second imposter syndrome thing, which is like 100% still happens now. So within my job, I have already moved teams a few times, and what I think is always, I notice, is in the first week when you join a new team, obviously there's a lot to learn. It's like almost like starting a new job. And I remember my team lead at the time, that one I moved to, saying after the first week, like, wow, you've been so valuable, like it's really great you're on this team. And I said to them, like, but I've done nothing. And they're like, no, but you've already contributed. You don't understand how much you've already contributed. And I think it's really hard to remember, like, that you being on the team, you might not think you're actually contributing, but you do contribute so much more than you probably think you are contributing, especially towards the beginning, when just because you're not a senior engineer with 10 years of experience, you can, even if you have the basic skills, you as a human are actually providing so much more than what another person would have to fill their job doing what you're doing. So some people, they'll see it as such a help by you being there, and then you pick up all the skills, and within a few months you can already do a lot of what they're doing already. So it's such a fast process, and I wouldn't worry about like not being good enough at that point. Definitely not.
Brilliant. Thank you, Katie.
Can I just add, like, from the other side, and like, companies don't like take interviewing lightly. Like, if you've like got through to that like step, like, it means someone's spending, you know, maybe half an hour of their day, like, to take the time to speak to you. So that already means there is some interest. Like, people put a lot of effort into interviewing. So I think once you're through the door, you're like, you've got the same chance as anyone else from like whatever background. So like, use it more as an opportunity. Like, this is your time to kind of sell yourself. Like, don't, you know, you wouldn't kind of be in that position if they didn't think you had something to offer. So like, definitely try and use it as an opportunity as opposed to seeing yourself as like an imposter.
Very good. I like that.
And just to add, I mean, we, you know, even we have sort of regular, you know, webcasts and seminars and talks where we discuss all sorts of different things. But one thing that still comes up is imposter syndrome. So I guess there's some comfort to take from, you know, when you're in a room with, you know, what you might think are lots of important people. Lots of them are also there thinking, oh, you know, hopefully no one asked me a difficult question or something like that. So I think it's something that for lots of people, it never, you know, totally goes away. But you should definitely, you know, take some confidence in thinking, look, I know my stuff. As Katie said, you know, you're there for a reason, and hopefully you can take some comfort from that and almost become comfortable, you know, with that feeling of, oh, I'm a little bit nervous, but you know, I've done my prep. I've got, you know, experience which no one else does, and use that to your advantage.
That's great. Thanks, Benji. Yeah, we all have it, even to this day. Any final questions? We're coming to the end. We've only got a couple of minutes left, but if anyone had one final question. Okay. I'm going to just, one final question that someone can answer. You know, for professionals, I want you to imagine you're back at the stage of being an undergrad. Okay, let's say you're 1 or 2 years away from graduating. What is the one bit of advice you would give to yourself if you were back? In other words, the people in this Zoom today, if you had to give one bit of advice to them, for what would you say? How about we just finish with Alex? One bit of advice for everyone. If you were back at that stage, what would you say to yourself?
If I was back in my final year of university, I would say, I mean, it comes off the back of what we've said already quite a few times, which is it's do as much of your own projects as possible. It's get as involved as possible to show that you're passionate about the subject. It's incredibly easy to tell when somebody is, you know, especially in an interview, when somebody is kind of by default just going with the flow and is just trying to get a job to pay their bills, versus somebody who's actually really enjoying what they do and has clearly in their own time put in quite a lot of effort. I did one project. I actually regret that. I wish I had a website full of, like, a portfolio full of my own projects that I've done for different freelancing stuff that I could have done in the past. And now I have a permanent job, so it's really hard to actually find the time to do those things. And I would say that it shows your passion, it shows your skill set. So do it as much as you can. Do it, you know, find a problem to solve in the community, for your family, for anyone. Find a way to solve it through technology. Build something and slap it on your CV.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Alex. Yeah, do as much as you can. to add to your portfolio, to add to your experience. Yeah, brilliant. Thank you very much, everyone. I want to say a massive thank you to our professionals, Benji, Jason, Alex and Katie, for taking time out of their day to talk to us tonight. It's really, really been helpful. And I, for one, have really enjoyed listening to you. So thank you very much. And thank you to everyone else for coming along. We do have 2 more sessions left of our Graduate Careers Month, next Tuesday and Thursday. So feel free to check our website, our events page on our website, if you're interested in hearing about other careers as well. Thanks to on behalf of myself and Yael, thanks very much. And I'm sure we'll see you again soon. All the best. Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.